If your results are not pleasing to you, you do not have all that you want, things are not going easily for you, you are not in the dream life, then you need to do something about it. The good news is you can. You can make the decision right now that this is not good enough for me. And I'm not saying the journey will be easy or fast. I am saying it begins today.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. So those of you who have been keeping up with our authenticity challenge, we have just wrapped up week 6. Anyone that has completed, congratulations. I am still catching up and going slow. It was a little bit of a slower start to the new year, but I am giving myself time. And I just want to let any of you know who maybe you've been getting the call to do the challenge, or you haven't started yet, or maybe you're working through it. We are going to keep it open deep into this year. We feel like there's so much about our authenticity, about reconnecting to our soul's essence. It's going to be so vital for navigating this year that we want to extend it and make sure you guys have plenty of time to go in, utilize all the tools. So please jump back in as it feels called to you. And so congratulations to anyone who's completed it. We have our final live call next Wednesday, January 29th at 11 a.m. PST with Lacey and I. And we're doing something that we've never done before, but we are opening up this live call free to anyone. There's a link in the show notes where you can just put in your email and we'll send you the link to the live call. But this live call is really about understanding the power of how to harness and reconnect to our magnetism in 2025. Of course, we're going to be answering a live Q&A for you guys as well. But if you've ever gotten the call, the ping to connect with TBM in a new way, if you've been thinking about a membership and just want to learn a little bit more or really hear more on some of the energetics for 2025, this live call will be it. We literally never open this up. We only have it exclusively for members. So if you are a non-member and want to join and hear from Lacey and I and hear some of the teachings for this year in magnetism, how to navigate through things, this live call on the 29th will be it. It'll be available for replay. So check the link in the show notes, send us your email, and we will send you the link. And stay tuned for a really fun announcement that will be coming, a new feature inside of our Pathway membership as well. I am so beyond excited for today's guest, Coach Keren Eldad. She's an executive coach, an author, a speaker, TED Talk speaker. She has coached some of the world's top achievers, Olympic athletes, politicians, Hollywood stars, supermodels, special force operatives, renowned entrepreneurs. And she really, truly gets to the root of what gets in the way of our highest fulfillment. So much of what she teaches on is so in tandem with TBM, rooting down to authenticity. We can strive to be the top performer, the top achiever, going after the biggest things and the most success in our life. But if it is not rooted in true authenticity, in our true soul's alignment, and we knock out that outside programming that is put upon us, we're not going to enjoy it. We've talked about this so many times of how you can reach for all these incredible manifestations, or maybe you're stuck in your manifestation process. The key to refining it, the key to super speeding it, the key to actual fulfillment through manifestation is to be hand in hand with your authenticity, with your true soul's desires, with your true integrity. And that is really what we're going to dive into today. Coach Keren also talks so much about surrender and control, perfectionism, analysis paralysis, not being able to take those action step forwards. What gets in the way when we do find the thing that we are authentically lit up by and want to do? It's going to be a really good breath of fresh air. I know this recording was so motivating, not only to sit in on it, but to also hear it back in the recording and let everything that she's saying truly seep in. And she has her now debut book, Gilded, Breaking Free from the Cage of Ambition, Perfectionism, and Relentless Pursuit for More. It is incredible, detailing her journey as well through heavy, crazy, intense rock bottoms, and the transformation that she's made to grow and evolve and have such a beautiful life that she created for herself on the other side. It's about the transformation. It's about the connection to truth and authenticity. Available anywhere books are sold, including Amazon. Link is in our show notes as well. And I'm so excited to introduce this new expander.
And now a word from our partners.
Speaking of manifestations, one major manifestation that has come through for me recently is Bon Charge's infrared PEMF mat. Their PEMF mat, which stands for Pulse Electromagnetic Field, is a magnetic energy mat that sends energy waves to work with your body's natural magnetic field and improve your overall well-being. Now, I originally heard of PEMF mats back in the day. I used the first one at Lacey's Forest Retreat House, and I kind of didn't really think it was going to do anything at first. And when I laid on this mat, I'm telling you, my whole body just relaxed. My nervous system relaxed, and I fully was able to calm down. Fast forward a few years later, one of our absolute favorite companies, Bon Charge, has launched their own PEMF mat, and it is fully loaded with all the best biohacking techniques you can imagine. So not only do they have multiple frequency settings, one for delta waves to improve deep sleep, one for grounding and earthing that is in the frequency of Schumann's resonance, which is the Earth's magnetic field frequency, one for alpha waves to increase calm creativity, one for beta waves for logical thinking, conscious thought, or meditation, and one that cycles through all four to really align all different parts of your body. But that's not all. They also have red, near infrared, and far infrared light wave frequencies. You've heard me talk about this before, but red light therapy can be so impactful for muscle soreness, tension, pain in the body, detoxification, and so many more things. It is also packed with tourmaline gemstones, germanium gemstones, and amethyst crystals, which all help to balance your mood, keep you calm, activate spiritual awareness, open intuition, and attract positive ions from your body to keep you in that balanced state. And really exciting news from Bon Charge that all of their products, if you have an HSA or an FSA account, they're all eligible, giving you tax-free savings up to 40% on any product you buy from Bon Charge. This is huge. And it's also really cool that they're getting recognized for how much these biohacking products are impacting your health in such a meaningful way. So if you are interested in trying Bon Charge's new infrared PEMF mat, you can use the code MAGNETIC, that's all caps, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Again, that's magnetic, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Or you can go to boncharge.com/pages/magnetic and check out some of the other incredible biohacking low EMF products that Bon Charge has to offer.
All right, on to the episode.
Coach Keren, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. It was so interesting when we had our initial call. I remember being like, wow, even from that one call, I have so much to think about, to digest, to sit with. I think you really deliver so much wisdom in such a punch, partially because you've been through the shitstorm, as you talk about in your book, yourself. So you really know what it's like, but you've coached so many incredible people on this journey. I kind of wanted to kick off with some of your personal story and your rock bottoms. What was life before learning the tools that you're teaching now and coaching on and you have in your new book? And what did that all look like?
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me on. You know, I'm a huge fan, and I'm not just saying that. I am one of the weirdos who comments consistently on the YouTube videos because I always have something to say, and this is literally my jam. This is my favorite subject of all subjects, but there's a lot of clearing of the air that has to come before this, and there's a particular subset with which I deal, then I think that will really benefit from this particular session of TBM. Let's talk about manifestation for superstars. Superstars, believe it or not, have a much harder time with manifestation than anybody else. The game is definitely rigged against you. If you think that being a high performer makes you more prone to manifestation, you're wrong, and that's what we're going to talk about. And a great place to start is with the story of my favorite high achiever of all time, me. I am a recovering superstar, I like to say, in the sense that up until my mid-30s, I did everything, and I mean everything, quote unquote, right. I was by the book, as linear as it can get, checking all the benchmarks off of the list. I was an officer in the Army. Then I went to a very fancy school. Then I dated very fancy people and went to very fancy parties and ended up marrying the holy high kahuna, Jessica, a tall man. As we all know, that is the height of anyone's aspirations. And then I also had, because of the glorious education, really wonderful opportunities in my career, very glamorous jobs. I was heavily influenced by the 2007 movie, The Devil Wears Prada, which, by the way, I still am obsessed with. It's a great movie, but at the time, Miranda Priestley was a hero to me, and today I've understood that she's technically the villain in that movie. So I go down this path, and I end up holding a C-suite position at a very large billion-dollar corporation, married to said tall man, and living in the most beautiful home of my dreams. Check, 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 check. And I am not exaggerating when I say none of it fulfilled me. And it's not because of a lack of gratitude, but it was because it was a sham. I did have the job and I did have the husband, but the marriage was abusive. For as nice as we looked together on Instagram, because we always matched each other's outfits, he was horrific to me. I was living under threat. I was afraid most of the time of either an outburst or something happening to me, my physical well-being, my animal's physical well-being. The job was just fine, really. I mean, it was an interesting job. It just wasn't the job for me. It wasn't aligned with my zone of genius. I didn't have that nomenclature or the verbiage at the time, but it wasn't what woke me up eager for the day. It wasn't anywhere close to what I wanted to be doing. And the house, as nice as it was in Zurich. I am a New Yorker. And so all of these things, all of these manifestations end up looking very good on paper, but feeling absolutely terrible to my soul. And this is how I ended up suicidal in the shower one gloomy Swiss night. And that was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me because I did snap out of it. I had an epiphany, a moment of clarity, maybe even a sudden awakening where I realized in the moment that this suffering is my own creation. I didn't know how I was going to get out of it, but that I would get out of it. And that was the beginning of my path out of it. From that moment on, I took basically a blowtorch to my own life. Not only did I get a divorce and lose the job and then try to move back to New York and not be able to find a job for quite some time. So really big pauses in my life. And then, because the universe is kind of like this sometimes, both of my cats died within 2 weeks of each other. That one really hurt, as you can hear. For better or worse, that was the moment that I understood that a rebirth was possible for me. That we could start everything over again. And I took it really seriously, and I dove into the universe that I until then looked at like a snob, which was the world of self-help, definitely the universe of law of attraction. I always thought that was beneath me for sad people who need help and are spiritually inclined. And I dove in with all of my body, and it changed my life. It completely changed my life. Today, I sit in the middle of, I like to say I'm a master manifester because I've gotten everything I've asked for. So far, up until now. Don't worry, I'm still asking. And my job, I think, on this earth is to teach everybody else how to do it. And I know that not everybody will, but I know also that anybody can. Because if I could make such a big turnaround, anybody can.
I think even just hearing your life today, who you are, how you speak, what your energy is that you bring to everything, knowing all the things that you've gone through, knowing all of those hardships. I think of people in the community now who are struggling, who are in the midst of that really painful rock bottom, of that moment where it feels like everything is crumbling around me. How do I pick up? How do I rebuild? And I feel like that is the moment, that is the opportunity to look at that crack of light that can come in and say, okay, what can we shift here? From this place, how can we make a change in our life? How can we actually be reborn? How did you start to put things back together? How did you really understand? You talk about it in your book so much, but like, why you thought you even stayed in that relationship? How did you shift from the victim mindset of it? Because it can be so easy to be like, all of these things happen to me. They happen to me. How could I be so unlucky, or it be so unfair to me? And from that mentality, you can't really tap into the abundance of it. It's almost like two things can be true. You can be a victim of a situation, and at a certain point, you have to stop being victimized.
There's a difference between the physical condition of victimhood and the mindset condition of victimhood. The mindset condition will perpetuate itself. Actually, this is where the divergence begins. High achievers do not really digest things as this happened and I can't believe it happened. Not in the moment. They are very, very prone to accepting the outside circumstances, but they're not too aware of the fact that it is of their own making and that there's a real pattern in place and that it's a very big problem. So the first thing to acknowledge is that the awakening should have happened a lot earlier. And what didn't happen was I wasn't paying attention to the feelings. I was numbing the feelings and I was resisting the restlessness, the aimlessness, the fear, the fact that something was wrong. The first thing that should have happened was the step one in the Alcoholics Anonymous process, which is admit that you have a problem. And this one's extremely hard for high achievers. Unfortunately, many of us do wait for trauma to happen until we move. If I can save anybody out there some time, if you've been feeling restless, you're not at rock bottom yet. You've been feeling aimless for quite some time. You've been feeling like, is this all there is? And kind of wondering what that feeling is and if it's anything to pay attention to. The answer is yes. Pay attention to it now. No, things are not okay. It's very likely that if you're scrolling for 7 hours on Instagram, things are not okay. Something is up and you're trying to numb real pain. And you're better off facing it head on before it catches serious momentum and you end up either suicidal or in a really difficult situation that starts to spin out of control. Because universal forces are at play here. They are. That's a law of attraction thing. The worse things get, the worse things get. So the epiphany I had because of trauma was, I don't think this is over yet. And in that moment, I remember processing it the way a high achiever would process it, which is, ooh, this might be a test. What do I do in tests? I figure things out. I can use this. I'm being tested. So if I'm being tested, how would I show up if I'm being tested? Let's see if I can figure this out. Let's see what I can get away with. Divorce seems super complicated. Lots of lawyers involved. Seems very uncomfortable. I can do this. I can learn through this. So I literally turned it into a challenge of going through the test. That's the first thing I did. And once I got through that, which I don't mind telling you was the most uncomfortable period of my life, horrifying, very uncomfortable learning curve. But I think the best master's degree I ever earned, that's when I turned to really, really deep dive into the study. I was already accompanied by a book that had become a staple for me. It was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, which I really loved. And I remember thinking every page was just blowing my mind, the shifting of perspective. For some reason, even I, a fancy, highfalutin academic, had never been exposed to such ideas before. Why would you? Nobody teaches you this stuff. So I'm starting to really go down this rabbit hole, but that's where all of the other books start to accumulate for me. You're a Badass by Jen Sincero really stands out for me. Esther Hicks's work, the Abraham Hicks library, starts to enter my life. Tony Robbins' work, I mean, that's very, what do they call it? A gateway drug? That's very gateway drug. But I went through all the gateway drugs and it starts accumulating. And with time, I really start to not just employ these ways of thinking. I am thinking this way. I am starting to think there's an opportunity here for growth. And the stories in my book as a result of that are not just my story of breaking free of the gilded cage. You know, there's a big golden cage on the cover and me breaking out of it. They're the stories of now more than 1,000 superstars that I've coached who have, believe it or not, found themselves in very similar circumstances. And it doesn't have to be as aggressive as my condition. It can just be, I'm hitting a wall and I'm empty and I'm aching and I don't know why. That means something's going on. You've boxed yourself into a corner and you can break free.
Talk about the overachiever, because I know that is like a very specific archetype of person. Maybe someone self-identifies as it, they're proud of it, the perfectionist. I feel like there's stages with that archetype. There's either someone who's super proud of it because they look at all they accomplish and they're almost in denial and delusion of the ways that it may be having them suffer. And then there's people that know it's not the best, but in some part of them, they cannot give up that way of life, that way of thinking, that way of climbing. What would you say for that person? How have you seen it be identified throughout different types of people? And how does it get in the way?
Well, the high achiever is defined as a person who has achieved results above and beyond the average or the norm. The identification with a high achiever is far beyond those who have actually achieved above and beyond the norm. The way I identify overachievers is as an intense tendency to obsessive working. If you think about Alcoholics Anonymous being identified by the book 12 Steps, Trail of Traditions, I think of Gilded as Workaholics Anonymous. It's really people who are very, very obsessive in a specific direction. Now, this does not have to be career. This can also be rearing children. This can also be physical obsession. You all know a physical obsessive. We all know a workaholic, and we all know a person who takes parenting to the max, to levels that are perhaps a little much. My mother, Mrs. Eldad, comes to mind. Shout out, Mom. I know you're listening. We all have obsessive tendencies, and that's what all high achievers have in common. The problem with those the obsessive tendency is it yields results, and as a result, we become results junkies. And we trick ourselves into believing that we can control our results. That's when we start to really over-identify with the part of us that is achieving. We identify as achiever. And then, when things don't go our way in life and our manifestations take a little too long to show up, we move into force mode, which actually, as you know, makes things way worse and slower. That's what the archetype means to me. And I know that in that sense, most people who've picked up this book were like, I didn't think it was for me. And when you started talking about superstars and high achievers, I didn't think it was for me. And then I read 2 pages and I was like, yeah, that's me. Exactly. So the common denominator is the obsessive tendencies. And as a result, the Achilles heel in the world of manifestation, in very simplistic terms, is you're using way too much force or you're working way too hard.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Say more on this, because I think this is so, so true for so many people in our community. Yeah. I mean, I have been there. I am definitely recovering in this and working towards recovering, but still I see those patterns pop up time and time again, but specifically in the lane of manifestation, understanding the difference between surrender and flow and force. And for those high achievers, for those perfectionists, is it a lack of control? Is it a lack of result? Is it a lack of trust? What do you see really getting in the way? Because if you guys are out there and you're like, I've been doing all the DIs and doing XYZ, and you're so, am I doing it right? Am I doing this right? How can I change this more? And it's this obsessive thing, or where is my manifestation? It's been this long and it feels like this. I've been trying to strong arm it and it's not coming. This could be why.
Well, let's talk about it. First, let's define force, flow, and surrender so that people understand what these terms mean. Then let's talk about the particular composition, the things that are working against the overachiever. Namely, they're all in the tagline of my book, Gilded: overwhelm, perfectionism, ambition, the relentless pursuit of more. All of these are actually working against you. In most cases, unfortunately, you're over-identifying with those things as positive aspects. And as a result of that, you think you're playing to win, when, as you know, because you've read the book, you are in fact playing not to lose. Most of these superstars that I coach think they're Michael Jordan, and they're always aimed at hitting that net, and they're usually playing defense. And it blows their mind when they realize that, but most are literally not asking for the glory of the universe, for the vortex to open wide and give it everything. What they're asking for is just to defend what they have. And if that's your position, you are in scarcity. You are not in abundance. You are therefore manifesting even from a place that won't really allow you to manifest to the fullness of your desire. So let's go through this stage by stage. I told you, this is going to be really useful for people. But yeah, recovering overachievers do it best. And that's because it was way harder for us to achieve than anybody else. By the way, Brene Brown said her process took 8 years. That didn't at all surprise me. I was like, all of us are wired the same way. right? Okay. Number 1, force, also known as perfectionism. Force is the overworking or overuse of your physical power and capabilities in order to make something happen. What's already wrong with that?
Control. You're not allowing anything else to support you. You're trying to take control of everything that's happening.
Exactly. The words make something happen are antithetical to the process of manifestation. This is where all superstars listening in right now should start to understand that everything they're doing is working against them, and to learn how to do what I did, which was to literally learn to ignore my impulses and do the opposite of my impulses, which allowed me to get to my inner authority. My true self is not a make things happen person. Let them come to you, allow, receive, always. Number 2, state of flow. A state of flow is not your state of flow. It's the recognition of the flow of things. It's your ability to see the gains and the wins and the benchmarks along the way as natural progression towards that which you wish to manifest. If not, what you're doing is you're blocking your own manifestation. You're introducing split focus into the mix. You're saying, I want it, but I want it now. You're literally interrupting your own zone of awesomeness with interference. And that will repel, that will send the opposite signal. And the third is surrender. And surrender, I think, is probably the most misunderstood concept in all of the universe of manifestation. My book ends with it, and it ends with something that I'm very, very happy to tell you guys even before you pick up the book, which is the rise is not actually a rise. It's a free fall. At the end of the period of enlightenment, I realized that I wasn't actually going up. I was going down. I wasn't acquiring anything. I was letting go of everything. I wasn't becoming more of somebody. I was becoming more of nobody. And it was a real joy because it comes with enormous freedom. That enormous freedom does not mean that I have let go of my desires. That's the misconception. What I have let go of is the suffering, the obstacles to my desire. That's what I let go of.
So much so. And it's also making me think about, we talk a lot about dog paddling energy. And when you're in dog paddling, especially in manifestation, it's like I have these desires, I want to connect with them, and it's that dog paddle to get there. But when you can appreciate the fullness of yourself, of your authenticity, of your joys, what lights you up, how you want to spend your time and energy, it's this, Lacey says it's this quiet humbleness. And that's really what it is. It's not the accumulation of, it's not the achievement of. When these big manifestations come through, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's in my life now. And that visual of the surrendering, of the letting go, it feels more loving and beautiful and expansive. And it's almost like the opposite of what you would imagine. You're like, I have to let go of all this stuff, and you're telling me that's actually going to make me feel better. You know, wouldn't it? I accumulate the stuff, or I become the thing, or I achieve the thing, and I'll feel better. But it's rewiring that belief system.
Yeah, it's actually completely changing the formula. And in order to even change the formula, this comes back to what the extra step is for overachievers. I like to talk about ducks or swans because they appear to be gliding on the water, and you can't see that what they're doing under the water is dog paddling. The first thing they have to do is admit, in order to get to their authenticity, that gliding is a lie. And once you actually start to go, I just want you to know I'm making a ton of effort here, and this isn't working, and I need some help, you won't drown. You will be carried. You will be helped. The flow will start to carry you. But the first thing you got to do is break that cycle of appearances.
How do you begin to break the identification to that? Because I think part of what keeps people stuck in this loop, or maybe they break it for a while, they have moments of surrender, they have moments of flow, and then shit hits the fan, or they get tested some way, or they're afraid of losing something again. And then that cycle comes back in.
I dedicate the first 5 chapters of the book to take you step by step to that shattering, but let's begin with 2 really important ones. The first and then the last, to give everybody a glimpse. The first is what we've already talked about, which is admit that you're not okay. The first episode of my podcast this year was called Admit It, Your Life Isn't As Good As It Looks on Instagram. And I think that's the first thing. I'm not asking people to stop lying on LinkedIn. Oh my God, they're lying all the time on LinkedIn. But I am asking you to at least admit to yourself that things aren't so hunky-dory and that you're not okay. You don't have everything you want. Your desire is not fulfilled. You don't got this. The first thing that had to happen to me was for me to say to my first coach, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Can you help me? I am getting results, but they're garbage. And if I find myself in another marriage like that, I don't know what I'll do. Help me. That's the first thing that needs to happen. And that you're already cracking open that I've got this identification, that I'm measuring up, I'm okay, everything is fine, I'm a superstar. The last thing that will have to happen is you'll have to switch modes from caring enormously about appearances and achievement to caring about your true calling, your purpose. And I take everyone, as you know, on a deep dive to discovering what their zone of genius is and learning how to live in service of it. The real goal is for you to stop serving your ego, and for your ego, all the personality, all the physical senses, to start serving your soul. That's when we turn into a different person. That's that sweet humility that Lacey talks about.
One ritual I have been utilizing to help regulate my nervous system, to ground me back into my body, is being really intentional with my body skincare. So after a nice bath or a hot shower, I have been taking time to intentionally check in with my body and rub in Osea's Undaria Algae Body Butter. It is so rich and creamy, and truly one of the only body butters and body moisturizers that actually makes my skin feel smooth, supple, more hydrated, and last. So many times lotions can, in the moment, make you feel hydrated, and shortly after your skin feels dry or rashy or flaky. And this actually locks in the moisture for the entire day. There is truly no better feeling than putting your clothes on or changing clothes and having your skin feel so soft underneath. Plus, the smell is incredible, and I love how intentional they are with their products. Utilizing Undaria seaweed to replenish the skin's moisture barrier and keeping your skin looking healthy, shea butter to relieve dry skin, making it soft and silky, and using ceramides to moisturize, renew, and support your skin's moisture barrier. It will truly transform your skin, especially this time of year, especially if you're in cold climates or dry climates or climates that has poor air quality. Supporting your skin barrier is an absolute must. So make sure to check out Undaria Algae Body Butter. And I also truly love one of their other staples, their Undaria Algae Body Oil. They sell them as a duo pack together, or you can just check out the body butter as well. So give your skin a New Year glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now we have a special discount for you guys. Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code MAGNETIC10. That's all caps, MAGNETIC 10 for 10% off your first order site-wide at oseamalibu.com, or check the link in show notes. You have some really beautiful exercises in there too, really getting to the core of it and like stoking those questions of what is that thing that speaks to you. I listened to you on another podcast and caught a clip of it where you were mentioning someone asking you, okay, if you had $1 billion, you could do whatever you wanted. How would you spend your time? How did you come to that conclusion? How would you spend your time? And speak to that from that personal experience, because I think even watching you talk about that illuminated like, oh, I see her light up in such a way.
Yeah, that changed my life, just thinking about it that way. I mean, obviously for most of us, our parents sort of give us ideas of what's possible for us and what's the right thing to do. And it usually has to do with economic viability, no matter where you're from, by the way. I have clients I always say in Sydney and in Jeddah, same shit everywhere. When I started to think about that, what would you do if money were no object? What would you do that just lights you up? All I had to do was turn around, look at my library, and realize that all I would do all day is read, write, and usually talk. I just love talking. Nobody has to pay me for this. Chatty person, very communicative person. And so I don't know why this never occurred to me, other than I never saw a path for speaking, teaching, or writing that was financially viable. That's probably the only block, the only reason I didn't see not just what my gifts were, but what actually lit me up inside. When people really sit down to think about this, they will come to conclusions about why they love what they love, not just what they love, what they're obsessed with, but why they love it. And they'll probably give themselves more of an alley to get into it, to dive into it, and to see what's possible. And for the record, it's pretty profitable.
I think that is the other piece too, is that people may be in such a different field from what speaks to their soul.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I don't want to start from scratch. How do I begin this? What is a practical tip that you employed making that shift, or that you coach people on when they're so far away from it? They know it'll be a little bit of a journey, but that semblance, that importance of economic security, economic safety, it's like they can't ignore that that's a real issue or a problem in their life.
I understand that, but that's probably usually what's blocking them from admitting that they really have a problem, which makes them usually accept or excuse the problem. It's like people who've been in a marriage where they haven't had sex for 7 years. They're like, it's not that bad. It's fine. There's money here. There's safety here. I'm just going to stay here. No, your marriage sucks. Or consultants. I make a shit ton of money and everything is absolutely fine. No, it's not fine. You don't like it. It doesn't light you up. This is a prison. And your work is, in most cases, absolute nonsense. So why are you doing this? The only thing you can do here is just come first and foremost to an honest conclusion. The second is, unfortunately, what I'm about to say is going to irk people, but it comes back to the end of the book. You will have a shitstorm. I'm not wishing this upon your life, but if you're truly unhappy, something ungoverned by you will happen. It's a great line, by the way, that I picked up in an amazing movie from 1998 called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's an amazing movie. The movie is about fate. And this guy is cheating on her, and his friend is laughing at him again and again, going, you're not going to be able to maintain this for much longer. This is a facade. Facades cannot command themselves. All consciousnesses start to speak loudly, and usually that attracts chaos. So don't worry about it. Trauma will come. Something will happen. It'll disrupt your life, and you'll have to deal with it, whether you like it or not. Otherwise, I think the fate is even worse. You end up stuck forever in a dead-end area in which you don't even recognize yourself. You don't understand yourself. This is a different life. Now, I accept what many of my teachers teach, which is that might be some people's level of karma, and that's where they are. Okay, I'm not here to interfere. But if you are awake enough to hear this and to be bugged by it, in fact, if I'm making you angry right now, there's something there.
Yeah, talk about anger. This is a huge piece in the book, and understanding really that healthy anger that can mobilize and move us, and that righteous anger that actually keeps us more stuck.
Anger is the biggest problem for most humans. Whether we recognize it as anger or not, it's defiance. It's a resistance of what is. As Byron Katie always talks about, all suffering comes from our resistance of reality. We respond with anger. Why do you think the algorithms work on us so well? Because we are immediately indignant at what's happening, as if it shouldn't be happening. But it is happening. And so it's ridiculous to be indignant. It's okay to be mobilized. It's not okay to be indignant or to condemn, because that energy ends up working against us. Now, for the overachiever, that is the fuel with which they run their lives. Most of the overachievers that I coach have an I can and I will type script going in their body. I will prove them wrong, and I will show them, and I will show the world. And that has served them very well up until, I don't know, like the age of 38, when they start to have very serious side effects. Meaninglessness in their lives, climbed up the wrong ladder, have to go all the way back down and start over. The passion is not there anymore. They're exhausted, they're overwhelmed, they're burned out. That's because they've used this as fuel for too long. They've basically burned out. What do you do instead? I like to say break up with anger. And I don't mean, visit it on the side occasionally. I mean break up with anger. Let it go. Super hard to do in our universe. Any of us who is on social media, and who isn't really, like it's part of our connection to the world, they want you to be indignant. Anybody who watches the news, which thankfully I have quit, you are going to be indignant all the time. And just talking to other human beings, you will be indignant all the time. And then you'll move into righteousness, which is the desire to change the way they think or to make them wrong. This is not useful. To make them wrong is not useful. What if instead you started to understand that part of the process of manifestation is also acknowledging what you don't want, which is literally expanding your own desire. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. Contrast is good. So this is another one of the very, very large corrections that's offered, and the processes by which we start to sort of make ourselves more of a blank slate that can then become much more magnetic.
You talked about this in the book, and you have some really good quotes on it too that I highlighted. But a lot of times when people, even when they're leaving critiques or criticism or things on social media, online, the age of the trolls, let's say, right? They think they are demanding change. They think they are demanding a difference. And how do you see the difference between mobilizing something to change in a empowered way and feeding this feedback loop where you're actually making yourself really in a more victim mindset to whoever it is you're responding to?
So what's the difference between speaking truth to power and pontificating endlessly and just making yourself sick? It's pretty simple. One is speaking truth to power, which is mobilization, organization of human beings, proactive measures, informed measures, actual systemic movement. And the other is commenting on somebody's Instagram, which absolutely makes zero sense. If you're not really mobilizing, you're not usually doing anything that's particularly proactive, other than making yourself sick and making your echo chamber agree with you. And if you want that, you will find it. Any room that you walk into includes several people who will agree with your pathos and neurosis and will only make it bigger. It's not going to make it better. The real understanding, by the way, of how to correct the world is to stop resisting. It's to really stop resisting. It's to understand how to go with it and to find avenues for proactive correction and growth in spite of what's happening, not against what's happening.
So if people feel this come up, right, they see a big something of injustice or something that bothers them, or even break it down to a really small scale. Someone at work pisses them off because they parked in the wrong parking spot, like something as simple as that. How would you recommend someone having to reframe and rewire that experience?
Take a moment before you attack that person who has been so evil and stolen your parking spot, and think in 3 steps. Number 1, is the problem, or is the way I'm about to react probably going to be a bigger problem? If it's going to be uncollaborative, if it's going to be ugly, if it's going to be angry, it's always your reaction, which will be worse than the aggressive thing that has happened itself. Number 2, is there any other way to see this? Maybe they didn't know. Or maybe there's something we need to work out. Or maybe this is just a tiny little thing and I can chill out about it and maybe find a more proactive agreement moving forward. And this is my opportunity to go talk about my parking spot for a more long-term solution. Once you've done that, you'll probably feel a little bit more chillaxed. You'll be able to ask the 3rd question. The 3rd question is, what's the opportunity here? And you have several. Number 1 is, don't ruin your day. Number 2 is, don't ruin somebody else's day. Number 3 is, reach a proactive agreement. And that is when we move into responding to problems. I am all about speaking truth to power. My parents are protesting every single weekend. So, I come from a long line of protesters, but I will not do so until I've cleared my mind first and I am not in an antagonistic mode. I am truly moving for peace and the highest good, or I will not move at all. As long as I'm not in a coercion mode, I'm not trying to get someone to move to my agenda, I can move. That is what I mean by that. Thanks for letting me say that. I think it'll clarify for a lot of people that last bit. I'm not saying don't take action. I'm saying don't take reactive, combustible, futile action.
I think too, this day and age and just our exposure to everything going on in the world and everything, it can feel social media, it can feel like a hotbed for these types of things to come up. And it happens so fast, especially on social media, how quickly it can rob our peace. Talk about the power of actually honoring our inner peace over outside expectations or outside control or any of that.
I think that's the biggest thing that's missing. Most of us have such a low sense of self-worth that we don't believe we deserve peace. We believe we need to prove our place in the world and our merit in the world in order to have peace. This is a very flawed equation. The equation should be, I deserve peace. and therefore I am worthy. I am a spreader of peace. This took me a long time to unwind from, really. I was all about justice most of my life, and that didn't work out so well for me. I was just living a life of anger and fighting for my place and fighting to be recognized and fighting to be seen and playing everybody else's game and trying to line up, and it's exhausting. Why don't you just say to yourself, I deserve peace? If you want to attract the extraordinary, you have to vibe at its level. In order to vibe at its level, you have to already believe that you deserve it. If you don't believe that you deserve it, you're not getting anything. So how can you expect peace? How can you expect prosperity? How can you expect love if you are not these things?
Talk about that longing period, right? Like you mentioned even in your story that there was a period where you had to wait to figure out what job you were going to do next, and you had to wait for this. In that waiting period, when we're trying to connect with the flow, but it can feel really hard because we're like, we've been doing it for so long, or we're down to, the last part of our savings fund or whatever it is. How do you keep that hope? How do you keep that energy? How do you keep coming back to your truth despite the challenging circumstances?
So this comes back to faith. Real belief in yourself. All impatience, all force, ultimately fundamentally comes from a lack of self-worth and a lack of belief in yourself. So it's really the opposite of what the high achiever is trying to portray, which is, I do got this. Well, if you do got this, then what's the rush? So what if you run out of money? And that's when you have to really start to put everything together, all of the last episodes of TBM together, and start understanding I am being tested. And if I really am as worthy as I believe I am, then I can afford to go through this. This is faith. Faith is, to me, certainty beyond reason. Most of us only employ certainty within reason. In other words, here's why I deserve what I deserve. I'm nice and friendly, I have good grades, and I have proven that this and this and this can be achieved by me. Absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. What if instead you thought, I am worthy. I'm ready. It's got to work out for me. Just 'cause. It's worked out for other people. Why not me? Why not me? That's the attitude. And you have to practice it. Certainty beyond reason. I still remember this moment in my life where I had been in deep practice, Jessica, and I'd thrown all of myself into it. And I got the right apartment, and I did all the work and everything my coach said to do. And I'm down to my last $37, and my rent is due. This is New York City rent. P.S. Very reasonable for New York, but tons of money, $4,400 at the time. And I'm thinking, okay, but what do I do here? What do I do here? And I started to literally move into faith. And then I started to journal. What are the things that can really back up this faith? I've made money before. I will make it again. There are many ways I can manifest money pretty quickly. In fact, here are 20 things that I can think of to sell, people to call, loans to call in. I should probably check some of my handbags. There's always loose change in them. How many credit card miles do I have? From that place of faith, clarity came. I started to think. And when you start to think, you become resourceful. I closed that gap. That is one of my favorite stories because that weekend, I made thousands of dollars. Thousands. Because I relied on my faith. And I think that from that moment on, that particular scourge, the issue around manifesting money, it just went away. Don't worry, I still have other issues.
I got the chills when you said that because I think that unlocks something so big that I really want you guys to take in, that the aligned action, the things that the creative ideas, the creative solutions wasn't step one. It wasn't panic about not being able to pay it and scramble in a forceful way, everything to do. It was, okay, this is happening. How can I accept it? Okay, now let's fortify faith. Yeah. Let's connect with the energy of faith, that trust muscle, that part that you know that you can be resilient on the other side. Then you can allow the creativity of life force to come through you to figure out how to move through it.
And to just put a finer point on that, I remember the first thing I did was not move into the resourcefulness, really start to make action item lists of how to manifest the money from a greater place of clarity. The first thing I did was I realized that I had a lot of credit card miles because of the credit card debt. And I thought, I cashed this in for a first-class ticket to Miami because why be sad in New York when you can be sad in Miami? I can just as easily freak out there. This is already, I'm starting to relax, right? I get on the plane. I'm sitting in first class next to Lilia Stefan, who is a huge South American star. And she remembered me. She had sat next to me at a dinner a few weeks back. She starts making videos. My Instagram blows up that night. All of the requests that I put out for contracts start getting answered. And it was all because of this massive leap of faith. Massive leap of faith. I truly believe with all my heart that doing the opposite of our impulses is usually the way forward. And most of us are we're so fast to panic. We're so fast to work. We're so fast to make it happen that it's blocking our own good, our own manifestation, what the universe wants to give to you. Stop doing that. Watch what happens.
By now, you're starting to get the feel for TBM. Maybe you've heard about our workshops and you're interested in manifestation, but you just don't have the time or energy to sit down and do self-help work. We totally get it. In fact, that's why we created the Daily Practice, which is our massive library of self-hypnosis tracks that you can do anytime without having to jump into a workshop. We call these tracks our deep imaginings, or DIs. DIs are different than normal meditations because we designed them using a combination of self-hypnosis techniques, deep theta waves, EMDR-informed tools, and somatic experiencing. A fully loaded formula that is scientifically proven to help you clear your blocks and triggers on a subconscious level, giving you the power to actually create new neural pathways in your brain. So if your boss pisses you off, use our trigger DI. If you want to feel magnetic before a party or an important meeting, use the magnetic self DI. If you're feeling anxious or down on yourself or you need help making a decision, we've got a DI for all of these scenarios and more. You can get full access to the Daily Practice inside the Pathway membership, where you'll also get unlimited access to every workshop, tool, and offering from TBM. The tools in the Pathway membership will support you year-round, whether you're in the worst, a rock bottom, or second worst, a rut, or feeling good and you want to keep the magnetism going. In the Pathway, you'll effectively learn how to become your own manifestation coach, all for less than $1 a day. So even if you're not ready to start a workshop, join the Pathway and start rewriting your neural pathways now to create magnetism. Work through your triggers and get closer to your authentic magnetic self in order to manifest.
And we have our authenticity challenge going on right now, where you can ground into your true authentic self, your soul's essence, your soul's desires, and truly manifest the life you desire from that place. You can check the link in show notes or go to our website, tobemagnetic.com, to access and learn more. See the opposite to be true for some people too. For the overachievers, I 100% see that route for them. But then do you see people who are maybe more stuck in the fear or their unwillingness to take the action, or they have every excuse in the book why they're not?
Exactly. They have to do the opposite too. And that's because their form of working hard is working hard at the problem, at observing the problem. They're doing the exact same thing, by the way. They're just moving it backwards rather than forwards. The energy is the same. It's the energy of resistance. So they're stuck in what's known as analysis paralysis usually, or perfectionism. Usually I won't move because it's not going to be perfect or it might fail. And that is exactly the same energy. In that case, you also do exactly the opposite. If you're one of those people who is bogged down under enormous amounts of excuses and you have a reason for why you are so very overwhelmed and why your case is so very particular, your job is to go, I'm going to do it anyway. That's called a leap of faith.
That's so huge. I mean, even think about any time that you have a New Year's resolution or a goal or a manifestation or something you're going after and you know you have action you need to take and you're like, yeah, well, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it like this, or I'm going to do it when this happens, or I'll do it when that's your sticking point.
Let's talk about the real main glitch. The main glitch is between, I think most of the people who are tuned in here understand that when you ask, it is given. In other words, when you ask, the universe has it for you. They can intellectually wrap their heads around this. What they can't wrap their heads around is, it's available to me. Here's why. It's their obstacles along the way are a set of beliefs that are making them think that the only way to it is to either work very, very hard or to be counter to their authority or what they believe to be their personality. For example, I really want to marry the person of my dreams. I really, really want to manifest the love of my life. But there are no good men out there. They're all taken, apparently. They all died in a terrible apocalypse. I guess I got the last one. And they're mostly players, and they haven't been good to me. And I'm not good in relationships anyway. And it's not nice to be solicitous and to put yourself out there. And I don't want to be exposed on all of these dating apps. I want to do it a different way. You know what? Don't you think it's worth your while to consider that you might be wrong? To consider that it's going to be okay if you put yourself on a couple of dating apps? To consider that it would be okay if you took a chance on a few of those remaining amazing single people? P.S. People get divorced every day. There's new people in the pool every day. Why not? And once you interrupt that pattern by going against your impulses, by reframing the belief to begin with, you will start to see completely different results. And it's actually because you've loosened the resistance.
Well, and then your biases shift. If you truly believe all of these limitations are there, you're going to continually see the limitations.
Exactly. If that's what you want to see, I always tell people, if you want your neurosis, have another helping. Enjoy. I'm not here to take them from you. But if you want everything you've ever wanted, you may want to put it down.
It sounds so simple, and yet it is the biggest act of self-love to do so.
Correct. It's also why the inner journey is the inner journey. Nobody gets this right off the bat. I didn't get this. This took me years. I can do this for people in 4 months now. That's literally the length of the program. I know how to do this, but it took me a long time to figure it out. And that's what the inner journey is about. And you cannot short circuit it. You can't shortcut. You also would be very poorly served. You guys have incredible protocols, for example, but I always say if you're using them from a place that is lackful, you have not fully healed, you have not come full circle in your beliefs. What you're really doing is you're bringing beautiful rugs into a very dirty house. That dirt will seep through. Maybe not today, but it will. So what you would do well to do is take the time to clean house first. That's what the inner journey is.
How do you connect to your inner authority? Because I think people can start to feel, I'm sure right now, they're like, oh shit, that's me. I have to work on this. This is the thing. It's cracking open. It's allowing that light in. It's allowing for a different reality to be true that they could start to dip their toe in. But how do they go from like, okay, I could maybe see that there's a possibility that might be going on for me, to actually the embodiment of it and listening to what's true for them versus what is the fear, the societal programming?
Gosh, I love that you use the term embodiment because that's another level. And that is take everything from the head down to the body. The way to really start understanding that you're outside of your inner authority is everything is happening in the head. And you're ignoring sensations in the body. You're ignoring fight or flight. You're ignoring restlessness, aimlessness, anxiety, real feelings of malaise. But when you start to understand that there are two ways to feel, tightness versus relaxation, and you start looking for things that align more with you in a state of relaxation, you bringing yourself into a state of yes, you start moving closer and closer to inner authority. I really listen to my body now. I can tell when I'm in a negotiation and things are starting to feel off to me, or I'm with people and there's something a little, I can't put my finger on it. I just pay attention. It doesn't mean I'll resolve it immediately. It'll probably take me a couple more times, but there's something that I need to watch. Instead of my usual MO, which was a very people-pleasing self, which was like, yeah, this is fine. Let's just all be friends and get along. No problem. Today, I don't need to get to yes so quickly. I don't need you to like me anymore. I just need to allow myself to really see if this is safe or if this is not safe.
And I think that is what I feel like even this journey of this year, watching the astrology and everything going on, I really feel like this is a culmination, a time where we're asked to really define for ourselves, what is that truth? What is that barometer? What are those spaces and places that we do feel celebrated, seen, heard, championed, like we can relax and be ourselves, where inner peace is rewarded? And what are those spaces and places where we constrict? How can we really tune into our true? When we talk about authenticity, that's what it is. It's what is in our soul, of our soul's expression. And that is what is coming to the surface for everyone to really start defining for themselves. What does that look like?
I think that it looks like two things. Number one, your results are pleasing to you. And number two, you feel good most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And if you don't right now, if your results are not pleasing to you, you do not have all that you want, things are not going easily for you, they're not smooth, you are not in the dream life, and you feel anxiety about it 3 out of 5 moments of the day, then you need to do something about it. And you can. The good news is you can. You can make the decision right now, just as I did in 2012 in that shower, that this is not good enough for me. And I'm not saying the journey will be easy or fast. I am saying it begins today. And there are enough of us out there who will help you.
What advice, when you were in that moment, in that shower, would you have wanted to hear from someone else at that time that would just maybe super speed your process or help you along faster? Or, you know, obviously you have to do the inner work yourself. You have to come to the conclusion on your own. But was there anything that, God, I wish I heard that sooner, because that would have really helped?
Well, I think there are 2 things that will help you enormously if you're in this moment right now. The first is be easy on yourself. You're doing way better than you think. You will not know this right now, but I'm quite old at this point. I'm almost 50. And I can say to my younger self with enormous confidence, you're doing way better than you think you are. Way better than you think you are. You're way too hard on yourself. The second thing I can also say is it ends well. And I can say this with extreme confidence because I'm on the other side. I can guarantee it. It ends well. And if you saw the size of the blessing that's coming, you would be okay with the fire. You would be okay with it. You'd be much more chill about it. I promise you. It looks horrific in the moments you're going through it. When I was homeless and stuffless because everything burned in a fire for a really long time and dealing with grief on top of that, I couldn't see it. But I had the temerity to just sit down, watch a lot of Frasier reruns until I calmed my nervous system back to be able to move. Today, when I look back at that, I mean, it's been 10 years since that moment. Married to the best guy I've ever met in my whole life. Really, really delicious person. Live in a great house. Working in a job that I can't believe I get to do. I love it. I wake up eager every day to do this. Really good health, thank God. 2 new cats, Moose and Waffles. Beautiful little angels. What can I tell you? It's okay. It ends well. It takes a little while, but you can do this. So the first is be easy on yourself, and the second is have faith. Have faith and watch us from the other side. We are proof. We are expanders, and we are existing proof of what's possible for you.
And really take that expansion in. I mean, I can already hear the skeptics who are like, yeah, that worked for her, but like, what about me? Like, she's so strong and she's got this and she's got that. If you are at all inspired, if you see any hope in her story, she is an expander specifically for you right now. Period, the end.
Period, the end. Don't question it. The only thing we have to have in common is not circumstance, it's desire. That's the only thing that you and I have to have in common. So if you're connecting to the desire, you got this. And we'll take you the rest of the way.
Thank you so much, Keren. Where can people find the book, connect with you? Are you still taking on any clients? Is your book full? Like, what does all of that look like too?
Yes, I like to work with people one-on-one. I take on 12 clients each quarter. It is the beginning of the quarter right now. So please, if you are called to work with me one-on-one, go for it. The book is called Gilded, and you can buy it on Amazon right now. I'm so beyond excited to be touring the entire country and be sharing this all over the world soon. So if I am in your city, and you can follow me on KerenEldad.com or on @Coach Keren on Instagram. By the way, Keren is spelled with 2 E's. Please feel free to do so. I love meeting people in person. And, you know, I will be back in LA. We rescheduled, of course, the launch in LA, but I will be there in April. And God willing, this rebirth and renewal, we will all be celebrating it together.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process, but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacey, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out the Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you can check out our free mini workshop to find out why you're not manifesting and listen to one of our proprietary deep imagining audios, where it's going to help you drop into your theta state and overwrite low self-worth limiting beliefs. Enjoy. We'll see you next week.